We are live. I am live recording this for you on this Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023, for our session of The Good Fight. I want to continue to say thank you so much for your support during this time while I am in class. I think I've got three more. September 8th is my last day. So I think I've got maybe three more weeks, and then I'm done. I'm not enrolling in anything else anytime soon that I know of, because this came out of the blue. So who knows what might happen next. I just wanted to say thank you right now. I'm so grateful. And of course, I want to greet you tonight in the spirit of Sawubona, that Zulu tribal greeting that has become so much more to me than a greeting. I've done research, I've watched videos, I've listened to TED Talks, I have been on other people's pages scrolling, I've seen people using it in their work. I've seen people outside in the community who will walk up to me and say, "Tell me again." Or some people will start, they're trying to say it and they can't pronounce it correctly. And so we have this moment of, "Oh my goodness." So Sawubona means that this is a space that is intentionally created for you to be all of who you are, where you do not have to check any part of your identity at the door. You do not have to hold back any part of your story. And your story includes every part of your ancestry that has gone before you and has brought you to this space. And we make room for all of that, as we invite you to make room for all of that I am bringing as well. And together, how can we live into the spirit of oneness? The Sawubona says, we see y'all. We embrace y'all. we engage with y'all. We recognize and we realize that we are connected no matter what, whether we want to be or not. So how can we live into what it means to love as humans, one to another, one another as humans? And so, Sawubona to you on this night. If this is your first time joining us for The Good Fight, I hope that you'll stick around for the next couple of weeks until we are back live, because that is a totally different experience. But thank you for stopping right here. There are ways that you can engage with The Good Fight on tonight. One of the ways is to see yourself reflected in a mirror, all right? That you can source yourself in the story. You can find yourself. You can see bits and pieces of your own life's narrative, and you resonate with that way down deep in your soul. Another way you can engage is to look through a window where somebody else is centered in the space, and you sit back and you relax into their story. You listen actively and consciously to their story, and you just want to hear it, and you want to let them know that you are holding them as they tell this story. You're not trying to figure out what questions you're going to ask. You're not trying to figure out how they ended up in that situation. You're not going to try to figure out whether or not you believed it. You simply receive the story as the gift that it is. Another way that you can engage is to walk through the door. So the story then lives beyond this moment. We're only going to be here for a short time, but the story can live forever and ever and always, depending on how we use the story, how we allow the story to live inside of us and what we choose to do with it. So that opportunity is possible. You can still comment even now as you are. If I'm not mistaken, you can comment and then I will see the comments come up later. Yeah, I've seen comments come up later. So those are the ways that you can engage with us on tonight. And I hope that you do not feel any sense of hesitation, or you can hit me up. Area code 228, I always forget to do this. Area code 228-236-7440. I have no problem with you sending me a text. I am on Facebook, obviously. I have no problem with it. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I need to update that stuff, though. I've got a website. I definitely need to update that. But yeah. And so there are ways that you can connect with me, but the best way is 228-236-7440. And the even better way is to send a text rather than call on the phone. Because if I don't have my hearing aids on, It's gonna be a whole lot of Say that one more time. Tell me again. But just bear with me. I'm doing the best that I can, and I'm not ashamed. So tonight, I want to remind us again that the good fight is made possible by Just Talk Consulting. It is my own consulting firm where we really believe. When I say we really believe that that the only way that we can move ourselves to action, the only way that we could be moved toward action is to have the conversation, but not just any conversation. It has to be a conversation that is rooted in honesty, openness, transparency, vulnerability, and action. And it has to be a conversation that people are willing to give themselves over to. You're willing to become uncomfortable. You're willing to disagree. You are willing to challenge. You are willing to push back. You are willing to receive. You are willing to find yourself complicit. You are willing to see yourself as the one, as the oppressor. Like, you have to be willing to have the conversation in order for it to be transformative. But we don't have anything to do with how your body responds. We just want to make sure that your body knows it's welcome to the table for the conversation if you are willing to have it. And so Just Talk Consulting makes it possible for us to be here on this night. So we want to make sure that we are reminded that if we want to live, if it is our goal, if it is our true mission and purpose to live in a world that is more just, more equitable, more inclusive, and more peaceful, we must, it is imperative that we learn to live and love differently. I want to talk about how we got here tonight, asking the question, how do you? I really wish that we would get to the point that we begin to ask people that question and I just stopped right there. How do you? Because whatever else comes after that doesn't matter. I want us to begin to ask this question, how do you, in every context of our lives? When we are engaging in with other people, I want us to begin to ask them, how do you, blah, blah, blah? How do you, blah, blah, blah? Instead of continuing to live in the constructs that have been created for us, instead of regurgitating the information that has been fed to us, instead of repeating the lies and the myths and the narratives that we have been conditioned to believe, that we have been programmed to believe, that we have been trained to believe, instead of starting at that place. I'm okay with us acknowledging that place. I'm okay with saying, yes, I grew up like this. I grew up believing this. I grew up learning this. I thought this was true. I have no problem with that. But instead of approaching conversations and dialogues and relationships and opportunities to share space together, instead of approaching them from that vantage point of this is what I already know, that we will begin to ask the person, whatever the context is, how do you? How do you? Even in the same room, talking about the same thing, making room for the multiple ways that people can be doing the same thing right. There are multiple right ways of doing it. I'll never forget the day my best friend Wesley said that in a conversation. He was telling me a conversation he was having with someone else, but it touched me. I was like, I needed to receive that. There are multiple ways to do something right. And I've been thinking about that ever since he said that. And then it keeps coming up over and over and over again. And so this how do you question is what's on the table for consideration today. And I'm going to source it rooted in a passage, a pericope from the Bible found in 1 Corinthians. It's chapter 9, verses 19 through 23. I'll be reading them from the Message translation of the Bible. So I don't usually tell you that, but I'm telling you that now in case you need to go get your Bible and you want to read it, in case you want to write it down. Like, yeah, it's not a secret. It's not I got you. Here's here's the scripture. Like, no, you can prepare for it. It's okay. So 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 19 through 23, that is what I'm going to use to help us apply this question of how do you, and I put the question marks right there, but I think now I should have used some ellipsis points to say, like, how do you, or I should have used a space. How do you, but I didn't think about that. I just said, how do you? So there is this woman who is attracted to me, like romantically attracted to me. And I didn't know it at first because I am one of those ones who does not assume anything. I think it is dangerous beyond just the cliche that we laugh about, that if you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. We've turned that into something that we think is funny, it's kind of cute. Beyond that, we can find ourselves creating danger zones within conversations, within shared spaces, when we think we know something that has not yet been confirmed for us one way or another. And so I don't do that, especially when it comes to relationships, especially when it comes to attraction. I do not know that you are attracted to me unless you tell me. People will say things to me like, well, Denise, you know the signs. Denise, you can tell. No, no, no. I might feel it and I might think that I know, but I cannot, it's presumptuous for me to think that I know what's in somebody else's mind. It's presumptuous of me to think that I know what their embodiment of a concept or an understanding is or philosophy is. It's presumptuous of me to think that I know how somebody else interprets the same behavior that I'm looking at. So I do not make those assumptions. So when she said to me, let's have a drink, let's go have a drink, I'm like, okay. Also, because the nature of the work that I do, that's how you build community. As an organizer, that's how you organize. You sit down with every person willing to have a conversation with you in whatever context they want. If you want to have a drink, if you want to have coffee, if you want to have water, because you don't have to drink alcohol just because you're in a place that serves alcohol. So if you're like, I don't want to drink alcohol, okay, order water. So it's not about that. It's about saying that wherever you are comfortable, I'm going to be okay. And I don't mind meeting you there. Let's talk. How can we connect? How can we align ourselves? How do we find ourselves situated in this struggle so that we can form a partnership and move together in the same direction toward collective liberation? So I am always being invited and I am always extending the invitation. And I have had that to happen before. When I first moved here and I went to this church in North Little Rock and I invited the woman to have a drink with me because we had started a conversation. I was like, yeah, we should sit down and talk about, let's go to dinner, let's have lunch or something. And when I followed up on text, she was like, well, I just want to let you know that I have a partner. And I'm like, okay. And then I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't even know, like, I didn't even know I was doing anything that would even make her think that. So yes, so you might think that you know something, but you don't know how another person is responding to you. So I don't make these assumptions. So she said, we want to have a drink? Like, okay, fine. No problem. I'm okay with that. I do this all the time. I do this for a living. And all through the conversation, I was like, oh, okay. I thought I was feeling something, but maybe I wasn't. Like, I don't know. It wasn't until as she was walking away from me, that she said, I like you. I like you. And I want to, yeah, I want to see where this goes. I'm like, okay, okay. And so now I know. So now I know. And then because I now have confirmation, now that I know for a fact that that's what this is, now I know how to engage in conversation to relay to her how I feel. Right. So she's told me how she feels. Now let me tell you how I feel. So we're having this conversation, and so there has to be a follow-up conversation because now she needs to hear from me, right? And so I want to pause right here and say that even though I needed to say to her that I am so flattered. I appreciate you letting me know how you feel. Thank you so much. But I'm just like, I thank you. I want to have this conversation. However, right, I'm in a relationship and I'm in a relationship with a man, and that's where and that's where I want to be. Like that's who I am right now. This is my season, and I felt like you needed to know that, right? And so she was like, okay, no problem. I did not get offended because someone of the same gender expressed an attraction. Some people who find themselves being approached by same gender loving folks uh, lose it. We have stories where people have killed folks because they dared to express their attraction to someone of the same gender. And what I want to say right now is I really think again, how do you feel like how do you think about this? Because what I believe is that gender is a construct, it's something we have made up to control, to divide, to weaponize. It's something we've made up. What I believe with every ounce of my being, and I'm open to you telling me how do you think about this? Like, I believe that what people are attracted to is energy. Energy. Close your eyes and be yourself, and then allow people to come to you. Then open your eyes and see who you've attracted. If your energy is the way that you probably think it is, or that you probably hope it is, when you open your eyes, there will be a spectrum of people who have gathered around you because your energy drew them in. Your energy captivated them. Your energy said, yes, I want to share space with you, and I'm open to sharing space with you. Now, what that space looks like, that's what we have to have a conversation about. And so I wasn't offended at all. In fact, after we had the conversation about, my response to her attraction, we decided to enter into a relationship that's based on friendship, and to figure out what that looks like for us. Like, how do you see this? Since it cannot go in this direction, is there a direction for us? Because that's another thing I'm working diligently on. I do not believe that relationships have to be severed. And that is what the spirit of Sawubona invites us to entertain. This concept, this idea, this understanding, this framework that all of us can stay connected forever and ever, always. We just got to figure out what the connection looks like. And we got to navigate according to our shared agreement of what that relationship looks like. Because you can't be over here thinking that we're going to be romantic, and I'm over here saying that we're not, and then now we're supposed to be in relationship together. Now we got to make sure that we're on the same page, but we don't have to tear the page out of the book and burn it up. We just have to figure it out. And so that causes that means that we have to be in more conversation. That gives room for more conversation. And so that's what we've been doing. We've been in conversation to try to figure out what it looks like to let go of the idea of romance and embrace fully the idea of friendship. So as I am having this conversation with her about as we are having the conversation together about what it looks like to move beyond this romantic attraction, I realized that the two of us are not smart in the same way. Notice I did not say that the two of us are not smart. Both of us can't be smart. Both of us ain't smart. Like, I said, we're not smart in the same way. The way that I am smart centers around words. Words are my life. I use them to communicate in every way. I use them to communicate joy, laughter, sadness, jokes. I use them to communicate anger and frustration. I use them to communicate annihilation and fighting and war. I use words to help me figure out how I'm supposed to show up in the world, how to navigate the world. I center words in order to do that. And so words are what have become my lifeline. And so it is how I think, how I understand, how I measure my intellect. It's by how the words impact me, how they are used, and how they make space or close doors. This particular person does not use words. That's not how she is smart. She is smart in the area of embodiment. Like, the way that she understands life is by showing up and giving herself over to the space and then allowing the space to speak. She sits back and says, oh, okay, this is what I think I understand based on what I've sat back to observe. Like, okay. So one of the things we had to first work through is how to communicate, because I'm using all of these words. She's sitting back in the space and like, wait a minute, this is not happening. And so I said, oh, okay. It took me a minute to figure this out. I'm like, oh, okay. Denise, shut it up. You talking too much. Figure out what works for her. Okay. So I stopped talking, continued to share space, and began to just watch. Began to just pay attention. Began to just invite myself to be still and listen with my spirit and with my soul and with my intuition and with the words that were playing in my head but not coming out of my mouth. And then I said, oh, okay. All right. Now I think I get it. So then once I felt like I understood better how she is smart, then I began to show up in a way that I thought would help our communication. And that's exactly what happened. And we rocking on, still trying to figure out what it looks like to stay in relationship with each other beyond the initial expectation, forging ahead to what we both can agree on that can be healthy, that can be wholesome, that can benefit us, and also give life to the community. That's where we are. And I was talking about this to a friend, not everything that I'm saying, but something he said triggered in me this thought, this process that I'm going through with this woman, and made me say, oh, have y'all heard this one? Oh, I get it now. This is what Paul is talking about. I believe. So this is my interpretation, my understanding of what Paul is talking about in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 19 through 23. I think that it's only fair for me to say that Paul is not one who can always tell me something. So one of the things I think that happens to us when we have this, how do you approach when it is rooted in, instead of having the how do you approach, what we have is how else would you approach, right? So when we talk about the Bible right now, many of us find ourselves, if we are honest, we find ourselves when we're talking to other people, when they say something different than, when they express a theology that's different than ours, especially when it's related to the same Bible that they're talking about, that I'm talking about, we have this, how else do you approach the Bible other than the way I do? Other than the way I've been taught, other than the way I've been programmed, other than the way that I've been indoctrinated, other than the way that I've been, the word that's coming to my mouth is coming to my mind is forced. I was trying, like, sometimes I'm trying, like, don't say that. But yeah, but that's the word that's coming, that I've been forced to believe. Instead of having that approach, how else would you ask the question, how do you? Then there are times when I feel like Paul, the way we've been trained to receive Paul and all of the other prophets and writers of the Bible, we've been trained to receive them into our spirits as people who say to us, how else would you? So in other words, Paul positions him. We give position to these prophets and these writers so that they can tell us what we're supposed to believe. And that it's their words that we are supposed to ingest. And it is their words that we're supposed to regurgitate. It is their words that we're supposed to mimic. It is their words that we're supposed to receive and just move on. And so Paul has, in so much of my life, been given permission, sometimes by me, to ask me the question, how else would you? Like, in a shameful kind of way. Like, that ain't how you understand God? Like, you don't believe this about God? Like, and so it makes me feel some kind of way. So me and Paul, I have not severed the relationship, but we're having to work through an understanding of how we can be in relationship with each other in a way that is healthy for both of us. So Paul cannot always speak to me in a way that I receive it. That's my point. But there are ways that Paul can speak, and I find life in Paul's words. And that is really the whole point that this session of the Good Fight is about, inviting us to understand the complexity of what it means to be human, where the same person can be one who gives you one word that you absolutely denounce, and then another word that you receive freely from the same mouth, because we are complex, we are multifaceted, we are made in the we are divine expressions of, we are divine, and so we encompass so much. So it is possible in this one body to have all kinds of ideas and understandings, some that may conflict, some that may challenge. Like it's possible. So it's possible for me to receive and reject Paul at the same time. And here is one of those instances that is that comes alive for me in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 19 through 23. I'm about to put it on the screen. I chose the Message translation for one reason and one reason only. Out of the slew of translations that I had, the 5 translations that I was examining as I created a parallel Bible, and then there were 5 translations, and then I substituted 4 of those. So out of the 9 translations that I was examining, this is the only one. Now, there are more than 9 translations. So this is just the one I found in this moment of study when I was going through. I just chose these 9. That this was the only one that did not use the word slave. Okay? And so for me, I already know that as a person who is a member of the African diaspora, what I know is that you can never position Denise as slave for any reason. Now, what you can do is have a conversation with me about the system of enslavement that dehumanized my ancestors. We can talk about that. We can talk about it historically. We can talk about it in the present. We can talk about how to dismantle it in the future. We can do all of that. I can name that, yes, my ancestors were enslaved. I am not embarrassed by that. I am not ashamed by that. I am ashamed of the ones who enslaved them. That's who I'm ashamed of, but not my ancestors for being ones made subject to the system of slavery. So no, I have a problem with that, but I got a problem with you now, in the year 2023, telling me that in order for me to worship God the way that from this, how else would you approach rather than how do you, then for you to tell me that I got to position myself as slave, I can't hear you. We can't have that conversation. You cannot, there's nothing that you can say that's going to enlighten me. There's nothing that you're going to say there's nothing you can say that's going to help me understand where you're coming from. There's nothing. It's not going to happen. So if that is my response to this word slave, then I feel I have a responsibility to realize and recognize that there will be another person because I don't know who is listening to this. I don't know who's going to see this. I don't know all the people that you share this with. I don't have any clue. I'm not trying to keep up with it. I'm just glad to know it's happening. So I don't know. So I've got to be careful that I don't position anybody else that way, especially since I believe it's bad theology to begin with. So out of the 9 translations, well, the 10, including this one that I was examining, the Message is the only one that did not use the word. Go figure. So that's the reason I try to tell you why I do what I do, because I always want to be operating in the spirit of transparency, because I'm not trying to indoctrinate nobody. I ain't trying to proselytize. I'm not trying to offer you the gift of salvation. I'm not trying to baptize you in the name. I'm not trying to do any of that. I am just asking us to think about our faith, particularly at the intersection of social justice. How do we live our faith in a way that serves as a living witness to every person, whether they agree with our faith or not? How do we live that in a righteous way so that we embody the spirit of the Sawubona, the spirit of the oneness, the spirit of humanity? So I chose the Message translation for that reason only. So the rest of it, I'm not trying to hoo-ha and praise, but I just appreciate it because Eugene Peterson thought enough about the word to rethink it. How about that? If we would think enough to rethink, what would happen if we thought enough to rethink? Yeah, think enough to rethink. Okay, so here are these words. I'm going to put this up. I'm going to show you how, after I read it, okay, I'm going to put it on the screen so that you can follow along with me if you'd like. If you'd rather close your eyes and listen to my voice and allow the words to wash over you and receive them in that way, you are free in this space. I'm going to put it up on the screen. I'm going to read it aloud, and then I'm going to pause. I'm just going to be quiet. And if you want to know, I'll be counting to 7 in the way that I count to 7, because it keeps me from going too fast, so that I can just pause, so I can Selah and invite you to Selah. Pause and calmly think about that. And then after I've given space for the Selah, then I will bring us back and I will say, okay, let me show you how this fits into the conversation that am having now with my friend as we work and move towards what it means to be in right relationship with each other in a way that makes both of us feel whole. So here we are with 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 19 through 23. Even though I am free of the demands and expectations of everyone, I have voluntarily become a servant to any and all in order to reach a wide range of people: religious, non religious, meticulous moralists, loose living immoralists, the defeated, the demoralized, whoever. I didn't take on their way of life. I kept my bearings in Christ, but I entered their world and tried to experience things from their point of view. I've become just about every sort of servant there is in my attempts to lead those I meet into a God-saved life. I did all this because of the message. I didn't want to just talk about it. I wanted to be in on it. So undoubtedly for Paul, when he says these words, when he shares them with us, when he pens these words to say, if he did in fact do that, we assume a lot about the Bible. What Paul is clear about, crystal clear, that Paul is saying, I have but one mission. The only mission I have in my life is to save souls for Jesus Christ. All I want to do is to see people become, in his language, what would have been his language, followers of the way. I want you to get to know this man that changed me. This man that met me on the road when I had a different name. This is what I do not understand about people that are up in arms about folks living a trans experience who have the audacity to change their names. We don't have a problem with Paul changing his name. Paul used to be called Saul, and now he is Paul. And what the change of name represents is a new understanding of how to live his life. So what's wrong with people of trans experience say, I have a new understanding about how to live my life, and it is reflected in my name change. So if you want to address me in the newness of my life, in the newness of my understanding, in the newness of my baptism, in the newness of my resurrection, in the newness of who I am, just like we do Paul. But not even going all the way back to Paul. If I were to get married today, if I got married today to a man and decided to take his last name, tomorrow when you met me, I would say, girl, I's married now. My last name is Johnson. You would, you would then call me right then in that moment. Mrs. Okay, Miss Johnson, I see you, boo. One thing twice about it. So what is it then? Which is what this is. How do you then understand the name change in light of what is happening to Paul? In a way, how do you understand it? In a way that is not, how else can you understand it? How do you? Because we've got to figure this out, because this story that's happening, these stories that are being told, this narrative that we are creating for our children to watch, they're going to be so disappointed in us. We need to find out how we feel about it. So how do you feel about name change when it comes to people of trans experience, especially when you so easily accepted Paul's and you would so easily accept mine if I were to get married and live into that construct? And so Paul wants you to know that now that I am changed, I dedicate the rest of my life to doing nothing but finding a way to get people to understand that there is somebody who can make a difference in your life. There is somebody who loves all of you unconditionally. And I want to introduce you to him. And the way Eugene Peterson says, I don't want to just talk to you about him. I want to be in on your journey with him. I want to be in on your conversations. I want to be in on your relationship. I want to be a part of your life. I want us to do this together. That's why I'm here. Make no mistake about that. That is what Paul is saying. That ain't what I'm saying. I'm not saying that my mission and my purpose is to get you to come to know Jesus and to be saved and sanctified and filled with the Holy Ghost and fire baptized, and so you can plead the blood of Jesus. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is Paul is on to something. I want to hold that over here. But Paul is on to something when Paul says, I will become the servant to these people. The servant is the word that Eugene Peterson substitutes for the word slave. And so I'm not even going to position us as servants. I'm going to use the word, though, to say I'm going to be the one who comes alongside you, because that's what servants do. They figure out, Hotep. Where is Hotep? Hotep talks all the time. There's a difference between being a politician and being a public servant. He makes that distinction. Right? Because a politician is caught up in the game of politics. You caught up in the fame of politics. You caught up in how you going to get over in your politics, how you going to line your pockets with the politics. But a public servant says, I've entered this political arena because I believe that this is the tool, this is the vehicle, this is the lane that I can use to get us to function in the spirit of Sawubona, the oneness of our humanity. How do we get everybody the resources that they need? How do we get everybody the education, the home, the transportation? How do we do that? That's what the servant says. So that's how I'm positioning us as servant. Yes, he's substituting servant for slave, but I'm taking it out of that whole connotation. I'm taking it out of that whole definition and saying it's positioning ourselves beside somebody for the journey so that we can figure out how to live into our oneness together. How can I be of service to you on the journey that we're both on? Because it's a journey of reciprocity, because you too then ask the question, how can I be of service to you? See, the slave stuff is one-sided, but this servant philosophy says, no. How do we come together alongside each other to do this? And the way you can do that, says Paul, is to ask the how do you blah, blah, blah question. Paul says, I decided that I'm going to be whatever people need me to be, not be their whipping post, not be their mat that they can walk over, not be their yes man, but I am going to figure out how they are smart. I'm going to figure out how they view life. I'm going to figure out how their lived experiences shape their reality. I want to understand. I want to get to know their story. I want to center them. I want to get to know how they relate to the same things I relate to. I want to know what you see when this happens. I want to know what you feel when this is said. I want to know what you experience when you see this. I want to know from your perspective, not putting myself in your shoes, because I'm not trying to pretend like I'm going to get it. I'm just trying to position myself as one who can say, okay, I hear you. How do we hold the both and how do we navigate that together? So Paul says, for the people that the world has set apart as an outcast, I'll be an outcast. I don't mind aligning myself with folks. That's what allyship is about. That when I show up in this space in this space of identities that I do not hold. So as a Black person, when I show up in white space, I'm not pretending that I understand what it means to be white. I'm not pretending like I'll know what it's like to walk in white people's shoes. I'm not pretending like I feel the same thing you feel when you see the same thing I see. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is understanding that in the spirit of Sawubona, we are living a shared experience. It's rooted in humanity. It's called life. All of us living together. All of us are having experiences together. We're all having the same experience. And just like me, as a person who the world has identified and called and decided is Black, then just like I need people to align themselves with the understanding of what it means to have a different experience, different impacted differently. I need you to understand it and speak up about it when you get the chance. I'm going to do the same thing. So if I need to be an outcast, I'll go over here in this space where I'm the only one who looks like me. I'll go over here in this space where I'm the only one that has a different sexual orientation. I'll go into this space where I'm the only one with a different political affiliation. I'll go in this space because I can navigate this space once I learn what is happening here and what the impact is of this world on these bodies. Then I ask myself, how can I support you? How can I figure out how you do it? How do you understand things? How do you respond to this? How does this impact your life? How do you see what is happening in this world? How do you? Paul says, I'll ask the how do you question for the immoralists. Again, the people that the world says ain't no good. Paul says, no. I'm going to come alongside you too. The people that we think are great and noble, I'll come alongside you. I don't think you know great or noble than me, but if I want to understand how you understand your life so that I can also engage in conversation. And just like Paul, I'm engaging in conversation so that a transformation can happen. It's just not a transformation that says now you are God's son. It's a transformation that says, now I'm closer to understanding what it means to be in relationship, human to human. That's the transformation I'm looking for. That's the transformation I'm fighting for. That's the transformation that I am allowing Paul to speak to in this moment in this text. So I'm receiving some of it and rejecting it at other parts of it at the same time. And that is okay. Just like some of you all do with me. I get calls from you all the time. I get messages on text messages because I've asked people to text me. So some people will use Messenger and that is fine. But it'll be like, I was with you for a minute. You had me right there with you until you said, okay, which is okay. Let's talk about it. So if we can, first of all, embrace Sawubona, the spirit of oneness. First of all, if we can embrace that, that means then that I've got to do some work. The next step is self examination, self interrogating, self analysis, self awareness, because the spirit of Sawubona necessitates that you understand that you are bringing the whole of who you are that is tied to your ancestors. That is, it's your heritage that you show up with everywhere you go. Even if you have decided, like some of my Black siblings in the Black collective, even if you have decided that you don't want to be your ancestor, even if you've decided to distance yourself from your ancestor, even if you've decided that you want to be disconnected from the ways and means and behaviors of your ancestors, even if you make that decision, you cannot sever the connection. You're still connected. You're just connected in a different way. And you're bringing all of that, the connection and your decision to disconnect, all of that is still within you. So, first, you got to say, yes, I embrace the spirit of oneness. Number two, you got to do your own analysis so that you know what it is that you're carrying into a space. Because even if you don't know it, here's what the beauty of the spirit is that I serve. The spirit of the living God that I have come into relationship with. Remember, service to me means coming alongside on this journey, on this story that's being told that involves both of us. So I'm coming alongside God in this story that involves me now that I've been created. I'm included in this. Okay, so now we're on the journey together. So the God I serve, that's what I mean, the spirit of the living God that I serve in that capacity. And so now that you have to do this self-analysis. So the spirit of the living God says to me that even if you don't see it, even if you don't know it, that spirit drops in me and I can see it clearly. I was just talking to somebody today who said, Denise, I think that you can see clearly because you can't hear. You can't hear, you can't see, you wear glasses and hearing aids. So I just think that your senses are heightened. And I do believe there's some truth in that, but I think that the senses that he's referring to are like your olfactory senses, your taste buds, those senses are heightened. But there's a third eye sense that I think all of us can develop, whether you wear hearing aids or glasses or not, where your spirit, your soul will speak. Your soul will divine for you. Your soul will make it plain. The writing will be on the wall. I mean, some people walk up to me and I look at them and say, I speak it to them before they open their mouth. I can hear somebody on the phone and say, I already know. That's why I called you. That just happened yesterday. I called you because I felt it in my spirit. So whether you actually know yourself or not, please don't assume that that means that the person you're sharing space with don't know who you are. Because many of us in the room will. It's just better if you know yourself. Who is that? Is that Shakespeare? To thine own self be true? This world would be such a more peaceful place if we would be true to ourselves. So, first, we have to embrace the oneness. Two, we have to complete the self analysis so that we can know who we are. And then, thirdly, we have to invite people into conversation so that they can help us see who we are, who we think we are. So now, after the self-analysis, I believe I know. I'm stepping tall. I'm walking. I'm strutting when I walk because now I know who I am. And what does my cousin say? I know whose I am. But it's only in relationship with other people that who you think you are is lived out in a way for them to either confirm or deny your idea, right? Because you're living out what's in your head. You're living out the story you're telling yourself. You're living out your own understanding of your own philosophy. But when it begins to mix with somebody else's, then you begin to see how this thing really looks because you're putting it into practice. It's not just head knowledge. It now becomes hands and feet knowledge. How is this thing working in the community? How am I showing up in community. Community has to tell you that. I was doing a session last Friday. We were talking again about allyship, and my partner was reminding the participants that you don't get to call yourself an ally. Community labels you that, because how you show up, the way that you show up over and over and over again, how you make space for the people who are impacted to be the ones who carry the conversation, how you check your power and privilege at the door, how you use your power and privilege to make sure you are amplifying voices and that you are opening doors for people. Like all of that you are doing on a regular basis for the community that you say you have aligned yourself with because they have an identity that you do not hold, they will see it and name you. You don't get to name it yourself. So you have decided after your self-analysis that I name myself as bubbly. I name myself as loving. I name myself as holy. I name myself as gregarious. I name myself all these things. Now, what does the community say about what you've named yourself? That's number 3. And number 4, can you receive the critique? We were talking earlier about critical race theory and the political push against it. And I'm baffled by it because critical race theory in the name itself, it makes space for the critique. Okay? It is a critique and it makes room for the critique. So that we can continue, so that we can understand that whatever this theory is that we have about race, yes, we can find truth in it. Yes, we can uphold the accuracy of it. And we have to understand that it's still living and breathing among us. And so it's going to continue to change and morph. It's going to continue to grow and become. It's going to not be the same thing it is today 10 years from now. So we got to critique this theory as we go along so that we can help to mold and shape it in a way that allows us as the community to be reflected in it as accurately as possible. It invites the critique. But many of us refuse to invite the critique. Refuse. We don't want anybody to tell us anything about ourselves. We think we got it all figured out. We think we right. And we think we right every time we open our mouths. I remember a time, and sometimes I'm still like this, but not as much as I used to be. And I'm grateful for growth. But I used to show up in spaces, not only would I be wrong, but I would be loud. So I'm loud and wrong and refusing the critique. Like my friend Deidre told me this today, Poe critter. I don't know why she gonna call me a critter. I don't know why I even repeated that, but I was just thinking about the sentiment of it. Allowing somebody to say, this is how I experience you. And I don't like the way it makes me feel. When you walk into a room, the energy shifts, but not in the way I think you think it does. I don't think it's positive when you walk into the room. I don't think when you walk out the door, all of the people that you think are saying good and wonderful and high and holy things about you are actually doing that. That's what's in your head. But let me tell you what's happening in practice. And what's interesting about that is that we don't open ourselves up to the critique, because how dare somebody tell me that I'm not who I think I am? But if we would allow the critique, we could become so much more. The critique is an invitation to becoming. So embrace the spirit of the Sawubona, the spirit of oneness, the spirit of oneness that welcomes the whole of who you are and the whole of who the other person is in the space. And then interrogating ourselves and analyzing ourselves so that we can know ourselves, so that we can know the good, the bad, the beautiful, the ugly, the evil, all of that, because the complexity of humanity encompasses it all. I watch a lot of crime shows, and one thing I get sick of hearing people say is, I I never would have thought this person would have done this. Why not? Why are you giving this person a pass on being human? I never thought this person would get so angry that they'd lash out. Why? That's human. So to deny people the wide expanse of human emotion is to deny them their humanity. Yeah. So we have to make space for the fact that not just in somebody else is there evil, the presence of, the possibilities of, but I hold them too. Just like I hold the presence of and the possibilities of good. I'm complex. I'm human. Let's navigate that. So Paul invites us into this conversation, asking us to explore how we can position ourselves alongside everybody. Paul does not say only alongside those people who want to be like me or look like me or who have a story like me or who have an experience like me or a shared history like me. Everybody. I'm going to position myself beside. And I am going to ask, how do you understand? How do you learn? How are you smart? How do you love? How do you live? How do you save? How do you parent? How do you? Not how else would you, but how do you? And I want to receive that. And I want to receive it as part of our journey together so that I can then reflect for you how that shows up in my life. As I am also reflecting for you how my stuff shows up in yours. Together. Oneness. That's what Paul is inviting us to consider. And that's what I'm inviting you to consider. And the work has to be done simultaneously because here's how we get paralyzed. Many of us will say, I ain't ready yet. I'm not going to get in a relationship with anybody because I'm not ready yet. You ain't going to never be ready. And you definitely won't be ready if you stray away, if you stay away from relationships, because relationships get you ready. They do. So we can't get paralyzed doing the work on ourselves, which I said is step 2. We can't get paralyzed. So we have to be doing the work simultaneously. As I'm working to get to know myself better, I am putting myself into community. I'm coming along aside other people so that they can help me see what I'm doing. And they can offer a critique. And don't get me wrong, you can accept or reject the critique. I don't think that just because a person critiques you, you have to believe it. Because I was critiquing myself Sunday at church. I was like, I think I'm seeing myself reflected. Do I do that? Do I act like, is that me? Like, I'm like, wait a minute. And so I'm like really having this conversation and I'm really taking the time. Like, let me think. So I was thinking about it all day. I was doing, I have tools that I use, exercises that I can take myself through, the same ones I take other people through. And I'm like, I'm trying to source myself. Is that what your problem is? That you see yourself? And after 48 hours, I was like, wait, has it been 48 hours? I don't know. 36, I don't know. 22. I'm dealing with something else. But I engaged the critique. You can throw it away, but engage it before you throw it away. Because you don't know whether or not to throw it away until it's been engaged. Number 1, embrace the spirit of Sawubona, the oneness that binds us together in our humanity. Number 2, analyze yourself so that you can know yourself better, so that you can see the possibilities that lie within you, whether you think that they are good or bad. Also, invite other people into conversation so that they can have an opportunity to help you see how you show up with what you understand. And then number 4, embrace the critique. You don't have to accept it or reject it, but engage it before you make a decision. It might just be what transforms you in a way that you didn't see coming, that will change you for the better, change your life for the better. It's possible because we're human. Thank you so much for joining us for the good fight. I really appreciate you again engaging me with this recording. I'll be back recorded again on next week, but it won't be very long before we'll be live again. And I simply cannot wait. See you soon.